Stefano Pilati is an Italian designer most well known for his incredible run at Yves Saint Laurent and pretty much being a style icon at this point. He's been in the scene since the late 80s, putting him at nearly 3.5 decades in the industry.
When I was like maybe 6 years old, my mother wanted me to take guitar lessons.
From that very first guitar lesson, he found himself less focused on the music and more drawn to the clothes, sparking an early infatuation with fashion. His uniform for those guitar lessons was a Levi's jacket and a pair of Levi's flares in moleskin, and he loved it not because of the music but because it actually made him feel like a quote-unquote rock star. He didn't learn much in those old school lessons, and honestly he got bored pretty quickly, but he was happy because he got to wear that outfit. At 6 years old in the early 70s, it was actually considered a really good look. Levi's was pretty much everything to him back then. Later on, he discovered brands like Wrangler and Roy Rogers, but for him, Levi's would still remain his favorite. This moment in his life is very important because it explains parts of his design ideology later on at YSL. His mother taught him how to dress for occasions, how to play with color the right way, how fabric should feel depending on the season, and why quality really mattered. She would buy his clothes slightly oversized so he could grow into them, and she cared deeply about dressing him well. He was always grateful for that foundation. But even at a young age, he started developing his own taste. He wanted things his mother wouldn't buy for him, and he became obsessed with the world around him. Specific Italian brands, the looks he saw in the streets, and even the outfits his sisters wore. He wanted all of it. The only problem was that he was so small that nothing ever came in his size. At home, he remembers experimenting constantly. He'd come home from school and change 5 to 10 times trying to find a look that felt like him, even if it meant stepping outside his mother's carefully curated style. It did eventually boil over at some point. One night, he remembered showing up to a family dinner wearing his father's tie, completely dressed up, while every other family member was in their pajamas, and it turns out his mother was actually really upset with him. That moment was just another step in figuring out what he was trying to do through clothing. With somewhat constant rejection growing up, he did often feel misunderstood in the way he wanted to express himself. Spending so much time alone paired with an artistic personality made those years really hard.
You know, my childhood wasn't the happiest one, frankly speaking.
His first time at Pitti in Florence was when he was just 12. His sister brought him only because he insisted on going. Nobody really understood why a kid at his age wanted to be there, but the moment he walked in, checking out fabric booths and watching the chaos of menswear unfold, it felt like heaven to him. At that age, with all the money he had saved over the years, he bought his first high-end piece, and that was the moment the obsession fully locked in. Now, clothes may have been the spark, but shoes actually became his second passion.
Shoes are probably one of the most important thing for me. I mean, I will never have enough shoes. Also because I believe, and this I openly told even to some of my friends that are shoe designers, you know, that making clothes is pretty cool and you can be really good, but if you, whatever you wear, if it's fantastic, it could be a fantastic dress, suit, combination, whatever look, you know, with the wrong shoes, it's just like crap, you know. If you wear nothing, like a white t-shirt, pair of pants, simple as they can be, you know, but with the right shoes, you know, you're kind of everything, you know. So I always say that 50% of the look, at least, is the shoe.
Stefano initially studied as a land surveyor before leaving school at 17 to pursue fashion through internships. He didn't attend a traditional fashion school program for his career foundation, but rather worked his way up through manufacturing jobs. He began as an intern for Cerruti, and with his experience there, it led to his first job at a velvet manufacturer. In the early 90s, he continued to work as a fabric consultant for designers like Versace and Valentino. From 1993 to 1995, he was an assistant menswear designer at Giorgio Armani. Mr. Armani has been the greatest source of inspiration to me since I met him when I was 16 years old. His elegance, tenacity, integrity, and dedication to style versus fashion were learned and carried all throughout my career. Even though they didn't see each other often, Armani remained a quiet but constant presence in his life, sending invitations over the years, including one for the 50th anniversary of the Giorgio Armani brand. To have been in Mr. Armani's thoughts through the years is my greatest honor. His influence will live in me forever. 9 years ago, when they ran into each other by chance in Milan, Armani noticed Stefano's outfit and asked if it was from his women's wear line. He was dressed entirely in navy, Armani's favorite color, and he joked that he wore it in case they crossed paths. When I was working for him in the menswear design studio, the relationship was kept formal, but I felt his friendship and respect. In 1995, he became the head of research and development at Prada. In 1998, Prada promoted him to assistant designer at Miu Miu, working on men's and women's ready-to-wear clothing and reporting directly to Miuccia.
The first time that I really started to design for women was when I was at Prada. And for me, beside Prada, Miu Miu didn't matter really. For me, the most important thing is that Miuccia would love what I would suggest, because even if she, sometimes it happens, and I've never been jealous about this. I've never been like, you give ideas, that's your role. Mm-hmm. You're her assistant, so you dare to give her ideas, for her to choose or not choose, and even sometimes she chose and then she, edited or whatever. I never took it personally, because for me, my challenge was to please her.
In the year 2000, he joined Yves Saint Laurent to run its ready-to-wear and accessories design for both men's and women's. In 2004, he succeeded Tom Ford in his role of creative director, and we have finally arrived at the Stefano Pilati YSL era.
What did YSL mean to you when you were a little girl?
High fashion, chic. Very chic, unaffordable.
What does it mean to you now?
The same.
Fall/Winter 05 introduces his very first collection for the brand. It immediately raised eyebrows, and it sparked a controversy around what the brand should become under his direction. Everyone, and I mean everyone, had an opinion on how to revamp the brand. Millions of losses accumulated before me. The pressure was there. People threw every expectation imaginable at him. Why not copy the archives, give us couture, find the codes of the house and put them everywhere?
This thing about the codes, when people go like, oh, use the codes of the house. You can't use the code of the house every single season, because otherwise, what is it? I mean, I don't know, people sometimes they should shut up. But anyway.
He shares these examples just to show the level of pressure he and many designers even today experience when stepping into a legacy house. And when you look back at that moment, it becomes clear just how heavy the expectations were. Studying YSL's archives can be approached in many different ways. For Stefano, it was always about starting from what genuinely interested him from that specific season. Could have been a length, a fabric, a proportion. From there, it became a process of deciding what to propose and what to reinterpret. For Fall/Winter 06, the collection leaned into a slightly orientalist direction. This was the last season during which he accepted being cornered into creating according to formulas and press appeals. For Spring/Summer 06, he spent this summer researching Picasso and reflecting on Saint Laurent's 1976 Spanish collection and adding random insights triggered by his preview of the Dada exhibition. I wanted something more spontaneous and passionate, with a bit of the industrial. For Fall/Winter 07, he created what he considered a pivotal show, a collection that pushed him creatively and personally. Showing it in the Mecca of art was really thrilling for him, and after introducing his idea of raising the waist in earlier silhouettes, he wanted more.
There is a reason why I raised the waist, from my very first show. I was sick of seeing women that so déguisées that, even if they couldn't wear those pants, those low-waist pants, they did, and they thought that was feminine, and men, they responded to it like a feminine gesture, while it's not for everybody.
For this collection, wool alpaca fabrics were jacquard woven with images of Paris from the 1930s. There was an incredible amount of study behind the cuts and details of Fall/Winter 07. As a final touch, each model's hair was finished with a leaf of gold. He created some of his favorite shoe designs at YSL. Francisco Russo, who served as his shoes director for many years before leaving to pursue his own path, played a major role in their development. In the Spring-Summer '07 show, the models had to walk a 60-meter runway covered in violets, a symbol of virginity and rebirth. They stumbled a lot. The reviews focused heavily on that, and he was rightfully upset. Yet the shoes from that show would go on to become one of the brand's best-selling styles. Around 2006 and 2007, the pressure on designers to produce an it bag that could solve and create a new revenue stream for a brand was overwhelming, at least for him. He always felt that a woman holding a simple clutch or walking with her hands in her pockets looked far chicer than one with a bag hanging from her shoulder or elbow. Accepting that everyday life demands functionality was something he had to consciously adjust to. He constantly resisted the presence of bags on the runway. That's when he began exploring the concept of aspirational design, basically bags as market tools meant to seduce customers who might start with accessories and then venture into ready-to-wear. But without names, shoppers and buyers struggle to identify styles, and in a world obsessed with it bags, sometimes all it took was a name. Despite all of this, he and his team succeeded with a bag named the Muse. It became so popular that they eventually created a men's version as well. Fall Winter '08 is one of my personal favorites. Not only did he love all the clothes for this collection, but the work also became slightly autobiographical. The references were filtered through YSL's lens, of course, but they were deeply personal. The downside to this, people began calling the shows the Pilati show rather than YSL's. To him, this was the only negative. For Spring-Summer '08, his menswear collection approached art as its central subject. He shaped it into an ode to artists, imagining them in their studios living contemporary lives where their style couldn't conceal their interest in fashion or their intellectual role in society. They were often the pioneers of mixing old with new, masculine with feminine, and studio uniforms with formal garments. In June 2008, Saint Laurent had passed away.
Seeing his simple coffin carried up the steps to the Église Saint-Roch, you get the feeling that this is the funeral both of a person and of somebody who is important to the whole of France.
Several people asked me if my design would have changed after his death. The question was pretty destabilizing. For Fall Winter '09, his focus was on equalizing the power of male supremacy by dressing as women in suits cut from pinstripe wool and cashmere blends. White shirts, pencil skirts, and an overall commanding attitude framed the collection's intent. In fashion history, the broad shoulders of the 1980s were a gesture towards equality and power. He questioned how to reference that language without entering into retro territory, especially since he has long believed the decade was not a particularly good one, largely because of its exaggerated shoulder pads. Still, the task was very interesting for him. Through precise pattern making and refined finishings, he reshaped the silhouette into something square, sharper, and defined by a more assertive shoulder line. He presented the Fall Winter 10 collection at the very moment a major YSL retrospective opened at Petit Palais. Only a few years earlier, the house had released a 5-volume publication of sketches and fabrics from every one of Yves Saint Laurent shows, materials that had once been accessible solely through the foundation. When working on silhouettes and cuts, nothing mattered more than the fabrics chosen to accompany them and the woman who embodied them on the runway. He believed the absence of color could be more powerful than using color merely to entertain an audience. Most of the collection appeared in black, accented only by touches of white and a few primary tones. He did not take kindly to critics who insisted on finding religious references in the collection. The golden necklaces intended as tributes to YSL's archive in one of his unforgettable eras were interpreted by the press as crucifix-like. Even a knitted bodysuit shaped into a Y was misread as a cross. For the Spring-Summer collection, his inspiration was domestic. For several summers, he had spent time in Saint-Tropez, a great place for him to lay and rest, defined by its beautiful colors, sounds, hills, and the sea. That particular summer, he spent the final days of his mother's life with her in a beautiful house overlooking the village. She passed away on August 15, 2009. For the 2011 collection, he wanted to explore the archives, in particular the 1967 African collection. Yet he found it a bit maximalist for his taste. He never liked excess. He loved dressing up, but believed that being loud bordered on vulgarity. What he ultimately created was his purest form of inspiration, a fantasy and a tribute not only to the famed haute couture collection but to African cultures more broadly. He understood that inspiration and appropriation often intersect, sometimes negatively and often for valid reasons. His focus was on details, the bend of an arm reminiscent of someone holding a blanket, fabrics echoing the textures of wood or mud structures, shoes inspired by traditional tribal spears, the imprint of his own thumb as a symbolic tactile connection, alike to those found in ancient tribal art. He said he really loved this collection since the silhouettes were sharp and the color palette was precisely calibrated to evoke the theme. It was a collection rooted in house codes, one of his strongest expressions of how to recite them and make them his own. During the 2012 collection, rumors were circulating about his departure. He considers this collection the closest to his own personal fashion and least YSL of his tenure. It was his quote-unquote cold reaction to the speculation. His contract was set to expire with Fall/Winter 12, and during those increasingly challenging moments, he questioned whether continuing was even the right choice. With sportswear in mind, he embraced lace nylon and magnified its motifs throughout the collection. The green loden cloth, used for spring overcoats, also felt distinctly Pilati. He reduced garment construction to the bare minimum and lowered waistlines for the first time in years. The evening dresses that closed the show were kept in separate rooms backstage. They had been sprayed with golden dust over deep indigo silk georgette. And with that, this would be Stefano Pilati's final collection with YSL.
The low point. No low point. No. Chance to, to work in fashion and to be in fashion is a privileged place,
In 2017, the menswear-oriented brand Random Identities was established.
Let me see. That's fabulous, yes. It's fabulous, yes. Do we like that? It's fabulous, yes. It's fabulous, yes. Just go to Kenny. You can't escape me. Yes, go, really, yes. Yes, go spectacular.
He relocated to Berlin and honed in on his own voice and fashion. The result is a brand that takes its inspiration from the queer club culture of Berlin with a strong gender-fluid attitude with a minimalist undertone. Mostly monochromatic in color palette, his tailoring in the first collections did not feel either masculine or feminine. He pictures the brand as rewriting the design codes that have followed him throughout his career. Around 2023, he got a forehead tattoo reading the words "freedom of behavior," using it to symbolize the genderless ethos of his work. In a W magazine interview, the notion of fame and freedom had come up a lot in their chat, and the interviewer was curious about the freedom of behavior tattoo on his forehead. I thought I would never change my hairstyle, and I liked the idea of having something on my forehead that nobody would see. I wrote freedom of behavior because I like my work, but also there's nothing wrong with being in a club with a drink and staying up until 5. I believe that, and I needed to symbolize it. It's a nice reminder.
I remember that once I did a collection, and at the beginning of the process, I was like, what do you really like? And I was like, a gray sweatshirt. And I was like, oh, great. That is so Saint Laurent. You're going to be like a, major this show. You know what I mean? I was like, come on. Like, you are Saint Laurent. What you really like, a gray sweatshirt? You're like, oh, no. And so, because I bought 2 vintage gray sweatshirts, like in New York, and they were so cool, and that's all I liked,
Back in 2023, I found this photo of him in this masterful gray one-shouldered sweater. Shout out to Chloe DSRMX on IG for capturing this photo. Super glad I screenshotted this before she deleted it. And now, with no expectations from fans and the freedom to create whatever he wants, we can get products like this sweater. Just everything about it is perfect. The fit, the little details on the bottom of the piece. And two other Stefano Pilati outfits that changed my brain chemistry was this one here. These trousers are just so good in precise length and width, and the second being this jacket, cardigan, shirt combo with the immaculate footwear on feet. The Zara Stefano Pilati collection was a highly anticipated limited edition capsule launched in October 2024, featuring elegant tailored menswear and womenswear, including sharp suits, dresses, knitwear, and accessories, known for its sleek designs, versatile pieces, and a predominantly black palette with occasional pops of color. The collaboration brought his signature style to a wider audience through accessible Zara pricing. Now the big question we end on is, will Stefano Pilati ever take on leading another major fashion house in the future? Who knows?